Hello friends, welcome to my channel Shashi Aggarwal. This is Dr. Shashi Aggarwal. Today we are going to understand what is the meaning of production function, short run production function, long run production function, and what is the difference between the short run and the long run production function. This is the chapter 7 which is relevant for plus one economics student as well as plus one commerce students. We are going to complete this chapter in two videos. In the first video, we will understand the production function. In the second video, we are going to understand the returns to factor. If you find my video useful, please do like it and share it, and also subscribe my channel Shashi Aggarwal. This is my app, Addressum app, which is relevant for commerce, economics, and management. You could download it from the Google Play Store. I will be sharing the link in the description box. This app is relevant for sharing free study material and also free mock test for the student of commerce, economics, and management. So, what is production function? When we talk about the production function, it studies the functional relation between the physical input and physical output of a commodity. Because when we are going to manufacture something, when we are going to produce something, we require inputs. So, output needs input. Land, labor, capital, they are the common input which are used for the purpose of production. And when we study production function, it is the relationship between the physical inputs and the physical output. We say how much input we have used for producing this much quantity of output. When we talk about production function, only material input or physical inputs that are taken into account. We are not, uh, we don't use the uh, economic value of the input or economic value of the output. They're only concerned with the physical inputs, how much quantity is used to produce the quantity of output. Like we require 5 units of capital and 4 units of labor to produce 10 units of X commodity. Production function is technological relation between the firm's production and the material factors of input. So we could say the quantity of X. This is the physical output of the commodity X, which is dependent upon it's the function of labor and capital. How many units of the labor we are using, how many units of the capital we are using. I'll denote the labor and the K denotes the units of capital. According to the Watson, production function is the relation between the firm's production and the material factors of production. How many inputs we have used to produce so much output. It does not establish any economic relation, which means we are we are not bothered the value of the inputs and the value of the output. We only understand the relation between the physical output and the physical inputs. Production function only establishes the technical relation between the inputs and outputs. Like we, by using 5 units of capital and 6 units of labor, we have produced 10 units of output. Production function purely a technical relation which establishes the relation between the inputs and the output. Production function is always defined with respect to a given technology or a given technical know-how. So in the short run, we have two types of factors, fixed factors and the variable factors. Fixed factors are those factors, the application which do not change with the volume of the output, they're constant. Like we want to produce something, so we require machinery. Machinery is installed even when the output is zero, when we have not undertaken to produce something. Variable factors are those, the application of which varies with the changes in the volume of output. If the output is zero, so variable factor will be zero. So labor is the example of the variable factor. Use of variable factor is zero when we are producing nothing. Production function is of two types, short run production function and the long run production function. In the short run, we could produce only up to the capacity, existing capacity. Production can be increased by increasing the application of the variable factors. There are two types of factors, fixed factors and variable factors. Fixed factor cannot be changed. So we have to increase the production by using the more variable factor. So there is a more variable proportion between the fixed factor and the variable factor, because fixed factor cannot be changed, and the by increasing the doses of the variable factor we are going to increase the production. So here in the short run we have returned to factor. In the long run there is no distinction between the fixed factor and the variable factors. All the factors, they are variable, so production capacity can be increased. But here we are using the fixed proportion. Like if we are using the capital and labor ratio 1 is to 2, so that ratio will be fixed. And here we have return to scale because our capacity can be increased. Short run production function. Short run is a period of time when production can be increased, only increasing the application of the variable factors, because fixed factor remains constant. Like we have a machinery which could produce up to 1000 units. So machinery cannot be installed immediately. So fixed factor remains constant. Short period is a very short period. We cannot bring changes. So if we want to increase the production, we will be using variable factor. Production capacity is indicated by the plant size, or the fixed factor remains constant during the short period. When one factor is fixed factor and the other is variable factor, so we could express the production function in the following way. That is the quantity of X, which depends upon the function of labor and capital. So here, how many units of the labor and how many units of the capital we are using to produce the quantity of X. So in the short run, there are two types of factors, fixed factors and the variable factors. Fixed factors, they're constant, they cannot be increased. So when we want to increase the output, we have to increase the application of the variable factor. So here we are producing the quantity 50 by using 6 units of labor and 5 units of capital. So 5 units of capital, there is a bar on the capital. It means when we want to increase the production up to 55, then we will be increasing the 7. Here we are using the 7 units of labor and 5 units of capital. Here we have increased the quantity of production by using more variable factor and keeping the fixed factor constant. So in the short run, there is a variable proportion type of production function like the capital and labor. The capital is fixed, 1 is to 1. So if we want to increase the production, then we will increase the quantity of the labor, 1 is to 2, 1 is to 3, 1 is to 4. So the ratio between the capital and labor is changed by increasing the doses of the variable factor. So here the variable proportion type of production function is used in short run. And here on the OY axis, we take the capital, OX, we take the labor. So here it is parallel to X axis, which means we cannot increase the quantity of the capital. If we want to increase the production, we have to increase the variable factor. Like we want to produce more, so we will increase the quantity of labor, that is the L1, L2, but the capital will remain constant. In the long run production function, all the factors, they are variable, so there is no difference between the fixed factor and the variable factors. Every factor could be increased as per the requirement. Long period is sufficiently long to increase the production capacity of a firm. And both the factors, they are variable, so we could express the long run production function, that is the function of labor and capital. Earlier we are producing 50 units of X by using 5 units of labor and 4 units of capital. But if we want to increase the production up to 100, so we will, the ratio again will be 5 is to 4. So labor will be 10 and the capital will be 8. In the long run production function, the ratio between the capital and the labor is fixed. Long run production function is also called constant proportion production function. Here we see As we go on producing more, we could increase both the labor and capital, but in the same proportion, in the constant proportion. So K1 L1 divided by OL1 is equal to K2 L2 divided by OL2, because change in labor capital ratio is the same. Here, a portion between the labor and capital is the fixed constant. So what is the vital difference between the shortened production function and the long run production function? Shortened production function is variable proportion type, where ratio between the labor and capital could be changed because the fixed factor could not be changed. So we have to increase the variable factor. In the long run production function, constant proportion type production function, here we could increase the quantity of labor and capital, but in the same ratio. Scale of output is constant in case of shortened production function, but in case of long run production function, our scale changes. Earlier, we are producing 1000 units. Now we could install more machinery, the capacity will enhance. So there will be return to scale. Shortened production function shows the return to factor, while in the long run, we have return to scale. Shortened production function in which factor ratio tends to change with the change of the volume of the output, because here we are increasing the quantity of the variable factor, keeping the quantity of fixed factor constant. But in the long run, there's no distinction between the variable factor and the fixed factors. So here, basically, the factor ratio remains the constant. The ratio between the labor and capital remains same. Output is increased by increasing the application of one variable factors, but here the output is increased by increasing the application of all factors. They are variable. Scale of output remains constant, but in the long run production function, the scale of output remains changed. Scale of output tends to change with the change in the level of output. When we talk about the shorter run production function, it is studied with reference to the return to factors, but in the long run, production function is studied with reference to return to scale.